So again, I want to welcome you all to this training session. My name is John Meredith. I'll be your instructor for today's session. Again, been with Sumo a couple of years and as a trainer, working out of my home here in Bedford, New Hampshire, like I said, where the current weather is 61 degrees and sun's coming out. That's really nice. The snow is pretty much melted, which we've had some very warm weather, and that's the way it's going to go. Like I said, we're supposed to get some more snow on Friday, and on it goes. So, like I said, what you're seeing behind me, by the way, is not a Zoom background. This is actually my office that I teach out of. So this is what happens when your kids grow up and they're gone and off the bank of mom and dad. You get to recycle their bedrooms as an office. So anyway, helping me today will be Odell. And so Odell, you want to say hi?
Good morning, everyone. Welcome. This should be a great class as well. You guys have been on board, some of you a lot. So we're going to continue that journey. Good luck.
There we go. Excellent. All right. I said I'm going to stop the video sharing here for a second, streaming, and save some bandwidth. But otherwise, we only ask is if you've got any questions, please feel free to ask. Okay. That's what we're here for, to help you out. So let me turn off the video streaming. And again, welcome to Cloud SIEM Fundamentals. As you can see, SIEM is an acronym. It stands for Security Information Event Management. So Security Information Event Management is what SIEM stands for. And you'll find that we've got a pretty impressive Cloud SIEM product. So we are going to talk about the Cloud SIEM data, how it comes into Sumo Logic. By the way, there is this class, which is the fundamentals class, and then there's tomorrow's class, which is the Cloud SIEM administration class. So today we'll talk about how this process works. Tomorrow you'll see how to configure that process. So for those of you in the admin class yesterday, we set up collectors. We set up sources to receive data. In Thursday's class, we will focus on how to get that data into the Cloud SIEM environment. Today, we'll simply talk about it. So we're going to have some labs, of course, to log into our Cloud SIEM environment, explore the user interface. Then we're going to talk about insights. We're going to talk about how to use the Cloud SIEM for threat investigation. We're going to have some labs on those insights. Then we're going to talk about how we can customize it a little bit and tune it using various creating rules, custom rules, rule tuning, and custom insights. So we'll do some labs on that. And then finally, we'll wrap it up with some questions and answers that you might have. And we'll give you an opportunity to take the certification exam. For many of you who have been with us before, you know that in the case of the certification exam, we are encouraging you to take it right after the class. And if you do take it and you do get certified, you can send an email to training-promotions@sumologic.com with a copy of your certificate. And we will send you within 48 hours, maybe make it 72 hours, a $15 Uber Eats voucher. So you will get a $15 Uber Eats voucher if you pass the certification. And like I said, you send an email to training-promotions@sumologic.com. So, and we'll put that information in the chat box when we get around to certification exam time. Okay. So let's talk about Cloud SIEM data pipeline, and how things work in here, right? So Cloud SIEM is our security information and event management system. It is going to ingest a lot of data, and from that data, it's going to correlate, aggregate, and do a bunch of things to really kind of help us understand where our security and operational issues are so that we can focus on them. One of the challenges in a modern SOC team, SOC standing for Security Operations Center, one of the challenges is fatigue, right? If you got to go through all the logs and look at things at a low level and see are they related, not related, stuff like that, that can wear a group of analysts out. Good news is this tool is going to do that for you. And so it's going to make it very easy for you and for I to understand here what's going on. It's going to help us tell a story, and then we can take action as we need to based on our company policies with regards to what our security stuff is. Curiosity, let's say a show of hands. If you'd raise your hand, you're in some security or SOC type role. So just so I can get an idea of how many of you this class is more applicable for than not. So again, I see people are raising their hands. That's great. 16 of you. So again, if you're into the security space, then I think you're going to find this tool very, very powerful. Okay. Well, thank you all very much. I'll go ahead and lower the hands. So fun stuff. All right. So here's the process. As you know, hopefully you know if you were in yesterday's class, our administrators can set up collectors. We can set up collectors and sources. We can grab logs from CloudTrail. We can grab logs from your firewall devices, your Cisco routers, all of that fun stuff related to security. We can also grab logs from your Windows event logs and stuff like that, from your domain controllers and see how people are logging in. Bottom line is this collection and ingestion process is our normal part of Sumo logic. So this is going to use standard collectors and sources, and we're going to ingest the data in. Now, as we ingest the data in, we refer to these as messages. So we have a bunch of messages coming from all various different logs, collectors, sources, all kinds of different things. And like I said, those are messages. From those messages, we are going to start going through those logs, and we are going to start parsing out the information. And if we need to adjust the formatting, we'll do that. I'll show you an example of that in just a few minutes. We'll also be able to map the fields to what the Cloud SIEM product uses as far as field names. So for example, we'll identify an IP address. We'll call it source IP or device source IP to denote where that IP address is coming from. We'll also enrich this information. We will automatically take that IP information and that domain name or whatever, and we'll look it up in CrowdStrike to see if there's any known threats associated with that domain name or that IP address. So the process that happens here as we come through out of this, we parse, we map, and we enrich, that then takes these messages and turns them into records. And then we're going to take these records and we're going to apply a bunch of rules to them. Now we've got several hundred rules that are based on the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So our Cloud SIEM product is based on the MITRE ATT&CK framework. And you can also create your own custom rules based on, things that are going on with your company and things like that. So you can create your own rules. If a record matches a rule, AKA there's something bad about this or something we want to investigate further, that sort of thing, then we will extract out the entity. The entity is the host name. The entity is the IP address. The entity is the username, some sort of a who value. So we're going to take the rules, apply the rules against the records. If we have a match, we're going to extract out the entity, and we call that a signal. Now, this is typically where a lot of SIEM products end, right here. Our product does something else that's really kind of cool. Our product is going to look at those entities and those rules. And if I have each of these rules, by the way, has a score, has a value, right? Based on how serious the rule is, the higher the score. I'm going to correlate all the like rules based on entity. So I'm going to look at the rules that have fired off. I'm going to look at those signals. I'm going to look at those entities of those signals. I'm going to correlate them by entity. And if the value of the scores of those rules is greater than or equal to 12 over a 2-week period, I'm going to fire off an insight. And that insight allows you to see kind of a story of what's happening. And so that makes it much easier for your analysts to be able to see what's going on. So this is all out of the box. This is all set up out of the box. There's nothing you have to do. We maintain these rules for you. Again, you can create your own rules if you want to, and we'll talk a little bit about that in this class. But it's pretty much right out of the box, pretty much ready to go. The only we have to do is bring in your source, your data, and stuff like that we want to. So let's take a look at the questions here. So first question is, does Sumo support ISAC feeds? Abra, I don't know what ISAC feeds are. I'm sorry. Okay. And then he says, why only 12 signals? It's actually not, okay, information sharing groups. Not sure. To answer your question, let me write that one down. And let's see if we can do some research on it. I will reach out to somebody during this class when we're on a break and see what's going on. You say, why only 12 signals? It's actually not only 12 signals. It's a question of, we're going to take these signals and we're going to look by entity. So by IP address, by host name, by whatever, by some sort of who. the ones that are related by those IP addresses or by those host names. And if the score of those, the score value is 12 or greater. So it's not a question of how many signals, it's a question of are those signals to the value of the signals 12 or greater. And yes, that can be changed. But we have found based on our experience, that's a good idea. That's a good threshold for actionable intelligence. And that's over a 2-week period. So if during 2 weeks you get signals that generate alarms of 12 or more, that's probably something that's significant. So I hope that answers your question. So, and then Andrew's got a question here from ISEC perspective. Does SIEM support sticks and taxi and don't know? These are interesting questions. I've taught this class probably 20 times before. Never had these questions come up. So let's see what we can do. I will talk to our security folks and find out. So let me get back to you on those. So I appreciate that. Okay. Somebody asked, can we add custom rules? Yes, you can. And we're going to talk about that in class today. And we'll talk about some more rules tomorrow. So stay tuned for that. We'll get into that just a little bit. So we break it down. If we are, say, Sumo Logic Coffee, which our main job is to provide a great tasting cup of coffee, right? Sumo Logic Coffee, this fictitious company, uses a Cloud SIEM product. And so they take all their logs, their transactional logs, their security logs, their firewall logs, their various other logs, and they go through this process of collection and ingestion. They go through this process of parsing, mapping, and enrichment. Now, when I parse, if I look at my log, and again, my logs could be different formats, right? They got different logs that I may be coming in. Here, for example, it says SSO : and it has an IP. The problem is the IP is not an IP address like 127.0.0.1. It's in dashes. Okay. So what will happen is when we go through this parsing process, we'll recognize that as an IP address, and we will go ahead and change it and parse it out and turn it into an IP address. And we will map it to a metadata field that we use in our product. So we're going to say source device IP underscore IP is 127.0.0.1. Additionally, we can go through these other fields. And we can also, in the enrichment process, look that information up. So we can send it to CrowdStrike and say, is that IP address a known threat? Or is that email address a known threat? That sort of thing. So this is part of the parsing, mapping, and enrichment. And again, it works out of the box. There is some of it you've got to configure, but not much. And once it's configured, it's good to go. Okay. So pretty simple stuff. Now that we've got these records from this process here, these records, now we're going to combine them against the MITRE ATT&CK framework rules that we have. And I'll show you where some of those rules are and all that good stuff. But here's where these rules are. They're going to get applied. If something matches a rule, then we're going to generate a signal from that, and we're going to extract out the entity. Again, the entity could be an IP address. It could be a host name. It could be a username. Typically, it's going to give us some idea of who the who is with regards to this. And then, as I said before, I'm sorry. So again, we take this information from our MITRE ATT&CK framework, and then if the rule triggers, we extract it out, create a signal, and we extract out the entity for it. Now, we're going to take the entities, we're going to take all the signals that we have by entity, and we're going to correlate them within a 2-week period of time. And like I said, if the score of these individual signals, these individual records are signals actually, is greater than or equal to 12, then we'll fire off an insight with it. If it's not greater than or equal to 12, we'll still see those signals. We just won't have fired off an insight. So here, and we'll actually get into this in just a few minutes, but here is the all-seeing eye. And if any of you are into World of Warcraft, this interface may look familiar to you. In fact, when this product was built, the developers contracted with the developers of World of Warcraft to come up with a user interface that was going to be less fatiguing on the users. So out here, when I look at this all-seeing eye and the range of this circle is there's a setting, a switch that you'll throw. How much time do you want to go back? 24 hours, 12 hours, 6 hours? That will define this range. But out here in the outer ring, these are my records. These are how many records I've ingested. Some of those records, we ingest signals. So again, here I'm looking at these column things. These are signals. From these signals, I'm correlating and figuring out insights. And so here I can see these red triangles denote my insights. And here in a few minutes, you'll get a chance to see that and play with that. So, all right, so let's go ahead and log into our training environment. Again, this is something you've all seen before. Yesterday, you all logged in as a training admin account. It would be easier today if we log in as a training analyst account. So what I'd like you to do is fire up your Google Chrome or Firefox browser, and I'd like you to go to service.sumologic.com. That's service.sumologic.com. And there it's going to ask you for an email address. And before you type in an email address, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to pick a 3-digit number, any 3-digit number. Okay. Yep. So Abra, that's what we're giving you right now, the details of how to log in. So we want you to go to service.sumologic.com. I want you to pick a 3-digit number, and I'd like you to pick a 3-digit number, and please make sure it's a 3-digit number. And then we'd like you to log in as training plus analyst with that 3-digit number at sumologic.com. So this email address is training plus analyst with your 3-digit number. You'll notice in the stuff that I copied in the chat box, there's hashtags or pound signs. Replace those hashtags or pound signs with your 3-digit number. And then the password that you're going to use is capital FEB 2022 exclamation mark. February 2022 exclamation mark. And you should be able to log in. Now, truth be told, I'm going to log in with my normal J Meredith credentials because I have some other things in here. And so I'm going to log into this training environment with my credentials. And I've got, like I said, a whole bunch of rights and stuff. So what I want you to do is I want you to log in. And if you're able to log in, I'd like you to go ahead and raise your hand. So I want you to raise your hand. Now, one other thing while I'm waiting for that to happen, here in the chat box, I am going to upload a lab guide. So if you'll bear with me here just a second. I am uploading a PDF document. Now, many of you should be able to see that document in the chat box and download it. Okay. Some of you may not because your company doesn't allow that. If your company does not allow that, please send a chat message to the host and panelist with your email address, and we will email it to you. Odell will do that for us. Okay. So Odell will send you this PDF document. So again, yes, Hassan, for example, if you can't, if you can't download this, then fine, we'll send it to you. So we'll like I said, we'll be sending the PDF for you. Now that PDF document, just so you know, let me open it up here. That PDF document has all of the things that we're going to do today. So as you can see, there are 6 labs that we're going to play with. And like I said, this is yours to come in here and play with if you want on your own. But we put these labs in a PDF document. New course, we decided to take a new approach. We put these in a nice document rather than putting them on the website. So you can, I can, we can go through these labs. These are the labs that we're going to go through. Okay. So let me, like I said, I'll get into that more and more detail here in a bit. Okay. Any problems with getting logged in? Any issues? If you're having problems, let us know. Let Odell or myself know so we can try to help you out. I brought the hands down. Okay. So people are saying all good. That means good. Excellent. I'm glad to hear it. Now, there is one more thing I need you to do. I feel like a bad Columbo episode here, but you've logged in here. You're seeing Sumo Logic, the product, and all that good stuff. What we want you to do is if your navigation panel over here on the left is not open, we want you to go ahead and click on it. Click on the hamburger menu or click on Sumo Logic and it'll open right up. And down here in the main menu, here in the main menu is where our Cloud SIEM Enterprise product is. And we want you to click on Cloud SIEM Enterprise, and that will take you into this product. And as I said, this is where we'll spend today. This is where we'll spend tomorrow. We'll be talking about this product for the most part. A little bit occasionally we'll go back out to Sumo Logic, but we'll be mostly in this product. Okay. All right. Yep. If your organization does not permit you to download the file, okay, then Natty, what I want you to do is send an email, send a chat message here to host and panelist. There's a selection here under 2. Host and panelist, I want you to send us your email address, and Odell will email you that that PDF file. So we'll get it to you one way or the other. Okay. If you missed the session yesterday, it's not a big deal, ever. Has nothing to do with that. Can you get a copy of yesterday's session? Actually, I'll show you in a little bit where you can get a hold of any of our sessions. Actually, I just realized something, we had a problem. So, but thank you, Natty. We'll get that email out to you. So let me help you out here a little bit. Let me go back to Sumo Logic. By the way, if you're here, and again, you just have to watch, guys, just bear with me. If you want to go back to Sumo Logic, there's an icon up here that has a grid in the upper right-hand corner. If you click on that grid, it says go back to the Continuous Intelligence Platform, CIP. I go back, that takes me back to Sumo. Now, here in Sumo, and again, don't worry about following me or following along, because I'm going to give you a link to that. So the question was, can I get a copy of the recording of our admin class and all that good stuff? Well, many of you know that if you've had classes with us, that here under Home, here under Certification, here under Get Certified, if you click on those things, you will be able to see a section called Recorded Live Training. And if I click on Recorded Live Training, you can see here, for example, the Cloud SIEM Fundamentals class. The problem is, and the reason I said uh-oh, is because the admin class hasn't been posted here yet. But if you want to access this class, the recording for it, you can click on this. And again, it's a quick registration. Click, you're registered. And then you can listen to the recording. And you can see the slides. And you can see the student lab guide. So that's how you get there. And I'm going to take this and I'm going to copy it and put it into the chat box so everybody has this link as far as this class. Okay. So you can also download it from here. For those of you, I said we'd email it, we will, but the point is you can also download it from here. Now, for the admin class, specifically for those of you who weren't there yesterday or whatever, who missed it, there's another way to get this information. By the way, you don't have to raise your hands. All you got to do is just to go ahead and ask your questions. If I go out to our support site, and the URL for that is support.sumologic.com, and you want to go in our support site, you want to click on community. So you're in the Sumo Logic community, and this is where us and our partners and stuff collaborate. And in the Sumo Logic community, if you search for the word slides, this is where you and I, whoops, excuse me, I did a post instead. Search for slides. There we go. Let's hit the enter key. There we go. And if I click on this, here is where I can see, for example, the admin class, the labs, the web recording, and all that. Here's the problem with this. So let me copy this and let me put this in the chat box as well. Okay, there's that. The problem with this is when you go into the webinar recording, you can see this recording all fine, well, and good, and you can play it. It's on YouTube, by the way. All right. So this is the class that we ran yesterday. But if and I need to get this kind of out of my way here for a second. Let me pin some things down, make it a little easier for me to see things. Okay. I'm going to take this URL. I'm going to copy it. Oh, I already did this, but let me paste it in there again. Okay. But the problem here is that if you want to download the slides, for example, for the admin class, we posted up to a product called SlideShare, and SlideShare is now asking, when you want to download this, SlideShare is now asking you to sign up for an account. That's why we've moved it into our certification area, but we just haven't moved the admin class yet. So that's the problem. So if that's an issue, let me know. All right. So Abra, looks like you found things. Looks like you're all set. I'm glad to hear it. And again, Jeremy, you're asking us to send you the doc. That's fine. I'm sure Odell will take care of that. So I think we're all caught up on the chat. Let's see what's on the Q&A.
Hey, boss, I can't log in.
Okay. You went to service.sumologic.com, right?
Yep. Yeah.
And you're using Google Chrome or Firefox.
Google Chrome. Yeah.
Yep. And you're logged in as training plus analyst with a 3-digit number. What 3-digit number did you use?
Oh, I know what I did. I
Okay.
was stuck on yesterday's class using
That's
training
fine.
admin.
Okay.
Thank you.
Training admin will work, but you really want training analyst. So, yep.
Yeah, thanks.
No problem. All right. So Mark asked a question here. Should we send all ingested logs to Cloud SIEM Enterprise? If not, which ones? Actually, Mark, I'm going to get into that a little bit more tomorrow, not so much today. Okay. But typically anything related with security information, you would like to forward them to your Cloud SIEM environment. And tomorrow I'll show you how to do that. It's nothing more than going into the source. There's a little checkbox. You click on that checkbox and it forwards the logs to Cloud SIEM. So it's a pretty simple step to do. Okay. So like I said, we're going to talk more about it tomorrow. Today, we're going to focus on the user interface and all that good stuff. All right. So back to my Sumo Logic environment. And again, if you get in here, again, if you click on Cloud SIEM, this will take us to our Cloud SIEM environment. And the next thing I'd like to do is I want to walk you through this. So the first lab we're supposed to do is give you an overview of this user interface. And that's what I'd like to do now, unless there are any questions. Okay. So
Hey.
up here, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I'll try to catch up. I'm having to switch some things around, but just in case anybody else is having issues with your browser, after you log in, if you don't log in using like a incognito browser and you log in as training sim, you might find issues getting to the certification fact site because it wants to log you in as the training ID that you used and not your official ID.
Okay.
So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm using incognito to go back and log into the service.sumo logic because it's messing with my official logins.
Okay. Sorry about that, Jason. Right now, I didn't want to worry about whether you're logged in as a training ID or a user ID to get to the certification site. It doesn't really, I just want to show you the resources were. So
Okay.
I appreciate you pointing it out. And yes, if you want to log in as 2 different credentials or 2 different Sumo environments, you'll definitely want to use an incognito tab because they are latched together unless you're using an incognito tab, right? They're these 2 separate tabs, even though they're the same user account and that sort of thing, unless in Google Chrome, I go out here and I launch this in an incognito window. Then it can be a separate account. So that's what Jason's trying to tell us. All right. So again, my focus here is logging in here and I want to go through the interface. So if anytime you want to get back to this screen, this is the home screen, if you will, you click on this button. That's how you get there. Andrew, is there a question? I see you raised your hand.
That was from earlier when I couldn't log in. Don't worry about it.
Okay, cool. Thank you. All right. All right, so in here, I can find an insight, a signal, whatever by name. I'll come back to that, talk about that later. Down here in the left side, this tells me when my system is online. I mentioned that when we look at things, we can pick a date range, right? So for example, right now I'm looking at the last 24 hours. How do I know it's 24 hours? Well, there's a selector right here. So I can pick and choose whatever time range I want. Now I'm looking at the last 8 hours. I'm looking at the last 8 hours of information here as well. So this selector lets you filter and see how much data do you want to see, okay? How much information do you want to go back? As far as it tells us that we received over 28,000 records in the last 24 hours based on this switch. And that's down about 3% from the previous 24 hours. And you'll see this will automatically update because it's constantly ingesting records. From those 28,000 records, it generated 2,000 signals. And that's up about 8% from 24 hours ago. And it's generated in the last 24 hours 3 insights. Now, I can also look here, there's some insight metrics that I can look at: dwell time, response time, remediation time. Because this is a security information and event management system, it keeps track of our actions. So as we remediate things, as we respond to things, it can keep track of that so that we can provide performance information about what has the SOC team been doing for the company, how many issues we've been resolving, how long has it been taking us to resolve them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Here I can see my insights by status. So again, over the last 24 hours, I have 3 insights. They're brand spanking new. None of them have had a status change where we've moved them in progress or custom or whatever. You'll find out in tomorrow's class, in the admin class, we can customize this. We can add more values. So if you've got maybe a SOC SWAT team that you use, or you outsource this to contractors, you can, create a status code for outsourced or contractors or whatever. And then here I can see a timeline. Here's my time, and I can see whether I generated an insight or resolved an insight or whatever through this little timeline. So this kind of gives me a big picture of what's happening. This right here is our heads up display, all seeing eyeball, whatever you want to call it. Again, as I look on the outside here, I see the total number of records we've ingested. I see the number of signals that have been generated from that over the last 24 hours. And I see the insights in these red triangles. So I get an idea of how things are going for us. Over here on the right, I see the latest insight. So this is the latest insight. I see this insight. All my insights have a number. That's how we uniquely mark them with a number, next sequential number. And the name of the insight is based on the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So this happens to be a command and control insight, and I'll get into it in just a few minutes. I can see it's, again, MITRE ATT&CK tags here. I can see who the entity was. This happens to be a user called Rico Dynamite. By the way, speaking of Rico Dynamite here, there's a little button right there to the right of it, Rico Dynamite. It's called a context action button. And I can click on it and I can take Rico Dynamite and I can look and do a Google who is. I can do a URL search. I can also look at my Sumo logic logs and see where else Rico Dynamite appears in other logs, other systems, all kinds of nifty things here. So you're not just looking at this application, you can tie into other things. Oh, and this context action button can also be customized by your administrator. Here, if I'm looking at this insight, I see its overall severity is high. An insight has a score of low, medium, or high, or critical. And so it's generated by 3 signals. 3 signals created this insight over a period of 5 days. Here I've got a little timeline with these triangles, which denote where my signals occurred. The higher they are on the x-axis, the more severe they were. So here's my score of my alerts or my signals from 0 to 10. As you can see, this one was a 10. This one was, I don't know, maybe a 2 or 3, probably a 3. And then this one was probably a 6. But we can see that in more detail in just a little bit. Down here at the lower right-hand corner, this is my syslog. Here I can see what my users have been doing, whether they've been resolving insights, they've been, new insights you've created. This is kind of my syslog, so I can see basically what's happening. Okay. Somebody says, I don't see the insight activity bar on the right. It is possible that your browser may need to be resumed. So if you go into your browser here and under your Zoom settings, you may want to unzoom it. For example, if I zoom out here, you'll see I've lost it. And if I zoom back in, it comes back. So it may be a zoom setting that you may want to play with your browser. Over here, change your zoom setting to about 80%. So hopefully that takes care of that little problem. Okay, excellent. Glad to hear it. Now, so this is my big picture, if you will. Up here at the top, I can click on insights and I can see all my insights. I can filter by my insights. I can see what's going on. I can see the specific insights. Again, the name of the insight is based on the MITRE ATT&CK framework test question. I can see the entities associated with these insights, how many signals I have over how long a period of time. By the way, when I look at this, when I click on insights and I see this, I can see this one of two ways. I can see a list, which is what this icon is, show list, or I can click on this and it will show me status. So here I can see that I've got 937 in my new category, 38 in my in progress category, et cetera, et cetera. If you want to, by the way, you can grab an object in here and you can move it from one status category to another. But there's other ways of changing status as well. You'll find in here lots of different ways of doing things. So those are my insights. I can also, if I want to, click on my signals. So I can sit there and see what signals generate, the most popular signals and that sort of thing. I can also go into my entities and I can see what my activity is in my entities. So Neapolitan Dynamite has certainly created an activity score of 10. This host name from AWS has generated an activity score of 9. So I can look at things either by insight or by signals or by entities or by records. You're going to find that with regards to seeing records, the only time we need to play with records and look at records is when we as an administrator set up ingestion of those records. We want to make sure those records are coming in. So tomorrow we'll come back and talk about records and how we set and configure that stuff up. Okay. So records you don't have to worry about right now. Somebody raised your hand. So if you got a question, please let me know. You don't have to raise your hand.
So let's suppose if I ingest like my my EDR tool logs into this Cloud SIEM enterprise, so that would be taken as records or signals or insights because it is already giving me an alert based on its own machine learning algorithms and behavior analysis.
Okay. So I'm not sure I'm hearing a question.
So like that log which I've ingested, so that will show me as a record or insight or signal in this particular Cloud SIEM enterprise.
It should, yes. So it should show you as an insight or signals or whatever. Again, your signals get correlated by entity, and that's what generates your insights based on a score. But to answer your question, you should be able to take your log data from whatever log source, bring it in, and it should do this process automatically. So does that answer your question?
So it will be coming as signals, and then we have to create insights on top of it, right?
Okay. The rules that we have, again, let me go back to this slide here real quick. Okay. This slide is the process. So you've set up your logs to be ingested. They're going to go through the normal collection and source ingestion process. Then we're going to parse out the fields, map the fields, enrich the fields, and that generates records. Now, these records are just informational. I'm going to take these records and I'm going to compare them against the MITRE ATT&CK framework. If that MITRE ATT&CK framework matches this record, that's a problem. That's something we've identified as an issue. We're going to pull out the entity from that record, and we're going to generate these things called signals. So signals are where I have things that I want to focus on and learn. Now, we'll also take those signals and we will correlate them by entity over a period of time, and that's what generates our insights. So I think you'll see this a little clearer here in just a few minutes. But that's the process that we use. Okay, I see. Okay, Abra, thank you. I think Abra mentions here, he's asking if the alerts from EDR will show up as an insight or a signal or an entity. They will show up probably as signals. Okay, and if those signals are correlated by an IP address or a host name or whatever, they could show up as an insight as well. Now, the problem is I haven't played with EDR, so I'm not 100% sure, but I think concept-wise, that's how it's supposed to work. So does that answer the question?
Yep, thank you.
Okay, thank you for asking. Okay. Are questions being asked in some places other than Zoom webinar? No, they're being put in the chat box for the most part. Now, some of you may not see those questions because they're directed to the host and that sort of thing. That's why I'm trying to make sure I repeat the questions. So sometimes people will send their question to host and panelists rather than everyone. So somebody asked, what is EDR? So good question. I don't know. What is EDR? Who wants to talk about what EDR is? Okay. Endpoint detection and response. Thank you, Abra. Okay. Now, just so we're clear, this whole security thing is kind of a new and evolving thing. There are a lot of people who have products and things with regards to security. There's the XDR product line and how that's become the standard for security and all that fun stuff. So the point is, there's all kinds of different products and stuff like that. Somebody says, Abra mentions it's kind of like the next gen antivirus. So again, and Typhi answered that same sort of thing. So the point is that you can ingest these logs and stuff into Sumo logic, and like I said, they will show up as signals. So appreciate the participation, appreciate the questions, appreciate everybody helping out with the answers. Now, if you don't mind, let me get back to this. Over here in context, and we're going to talk about this a little bit today, we'll talk about it a lot more tomorrow. When I click on context, I see lots of things. When you click on context, you only see rules, rule tuning, and custom insight. We can, in Sumo logic, decide what privileges you have and what things you can see under content. But here is where we would go into change and modify rules, do rule tuning, and custom insights, as well as other things, okay? So we'll talk about that in a little bit later. Over here is a gear icon. Many of you probably don't see the gear icon. The gear icon is our configuration. This is also something an administrator will do. Tomorrow, when you log in with the admin accounts, you'll see the gear icon and you'll again see some of these settings, not all of them. But I have full rights. I'm a full admin on this environment. So here I can go in and set up my context actions. You'll find I can go in here and customize my actions, my statuses, all of that stuff. So we'll talk about this more tomorrow. Over here where the question mark is and the red gleam, if you click on the question mark, you'll see that's where our documentation is, our announcements, all of that good stuff. It's your help, if you will. Now, the red gleam, the red dot indicates announcements. If I click on announcements, every time we update your rules, and we will update your rules every 2 weeks or earlier if something more urgent happens, but we will update the rules and you can then see what we've changed, what we've done, what we've modified. We obviously will modify and maintain our rules. Any rules that you create or any rule tunings that you create, that's up to you to maintain. It's up to you to modify. You'll also notice that icon just went away, that green icon. Up here, like I said, I can switch back to the Sumo logic interface if I want to. So I can switch back to Sumo logic if I need to. I don't like that it opens it up in a new tab, but what do I know? What do I care? It's not on me. And then over here where the little avatar or whatever is, this shows you who you're logged in as and your time zone. So that's a little bit about the interface here so far. Okay. Ali asked, can you join the same training at 7 p.m. tonight? Yes, you can. Different link, but different Zoom link. But yes, you can rejoin the class. It's being offered today twice, now and also later on in the evening. So yes, you certainly can. All right, so that's the interface. Are there any questions so far? Any questions? Then let's put this to practice. I'm going to take this latest insight, okay? Now I could look at it here, or I could go into my insights here, and I should be able to see under the latest insight, here it is, command and control. But I'm going to go ahead and take a look at this insight. So whenever you click on insight and you open it up, it's going to show you another dashboard type interface. So when I click on this latest insight, It's going to show me the name of my insight, and it's got a number that we automatically assign to it. And then again, it's based on the MITRE ATT&CK framework, command and control. Again, to the right of this insight, I have a context button so I can search for things if I want to, other systems. Down here, there's an action button. And I will tell you, there's going to be a test question that says, in what part of the environment can you take action or select actions or whatever? And that's from the insight, not from the signal, not from the entity, but from the insight. Okay. I can close this insight, and if I have permissions, I can delete this insight. Now, one of the things I'm going to ask you all to do is to not move an insight, close an insight. I don't think you all have the ability to delete an insight, okay? But don't do that. And the reason we don't want you to do that is we use some of these insights for our exercises, for our class. And so if you go through and move them or whatever, people won't be able to find them. So here I have a status, right, of this insight. It's brand spanking new. I could change its status to market in progress, don't use, whatever I want to. And again, I can put in different statuses as an administrator and fix that. But for right now, there's my status. I can also assign it to my users, right? I can assign it to other folks here if I want to, different users. I can assign it to myself. So you can do that. Here is the entity which this insight is all talking about. Okay. Somebody mentions that bandwidth is throttling. Not sure if it's my end or John's. So my question is, how is the audio and stuff so far? Are we okay? Is anybody having problems besides Abra? Fine for me, no issues. Okay. Just got jumpy. Okay. Good here. So it sounds like it might be just you, but again, I'll try to talk slower. Better now. Okay. I'll try to make sure my wife doesn't try to download any large movies. How about that? She's the only one here. I don't think the dog's got an iPad yet. So anyway, so here I can see the entity. And again, I can click on this entity and I can look it up in our logs. I can do a search on who is, all kinds of neat things here. The overall insight has a severity score of high. Okay. I'll come back and talk about that later. I can see that this insight is made up of 3 unique signals, and it was last seen 3 hours ago. Here's the time the insight was created. Here's the time that the event was logged or noted. And here's the dwell time. So how long has it been since this has happened? And here are some MITRE ATT&CK tags that we have for this insight. Now, one of the things that we're going to do with this insight when we investigate it is we would go in here and we can add comments. So we're going to document what we discover, what we see, and all that sort of thing. Now, as I mentioned, this insight consists of 3 signals. And if I scroll down, I can see what these 3 signals are. And they're listed in order of occurrence. So 2:18 at 8:03 a.m., 2:23 at 12:15 a.m., 2:23 at 8:09 a.m. It should be in the right order. Also, I can see a timeline here of when these things occurred. So the first thing that happened was I got an AWS API call from a terminated Active Directory account. Would everybody agree with me? That's probably something suspicious, right? I've terminated an Active Directory account, but yet somehow I'm getting an API call from that. Not a good thing. Over here, I can see the other activity, and I can see the other signal here as well. Now, I can, and I want to investigate each one of these signals. So this insight consists of these 3 signals. So I can click on any one of these signals. I'm going to click on the first one. And here on the first one, it gives me a severity score of 6. So anytime I have a record which matches a rule, that rule has a severity score associated from 0 to 10. And so whatever that rule says, in this case, it was a 6, indicating the higher the number, the more significant, the more dangerous it is. So this created a severity score of 6. It tells me what's going on. I have a disabled or terminated account that somebody's been trying to access. I can see what metadata values they use. I can see who the entity was that did this, the user. I can see the IP address that they're operating from. the device they're operating to, and it's from the UK, I can look at the details here and see what kind of activity they're trying to do. What was the API call that they were making? Looks like they were doing some sort of DNS lookup. Okay, I can see the source of this, the mapping of this, all kinds of neat things. Various extracted fields, again, the device IP, the search time, the search trigger. So again, this is telling me that I have a deleted Active Directory account that somebody made an AWS API, a programmatic call to. So something I want to be cognizant of. Now, I want to see the other two signals. So the way to get to the next signal, there's two ways I can do this. A, I can go back to my signals and I can go to the next one by clicking there. Or B, my personal favorite, when I'm in a signal, if you click on this double arrow over here to the right, it will then take you to the next signal. Here, I'm getting a rare GIS guard duty alert, instant credential exfiltration. So somebody's trying to use somebody's credential here. And again, the entity's host name is Rico Dynamite. I can search in my Sumo logs to see what other things they've been doing. Again, timestamp, what their IP address was. Again, I can see various other information. What host were they on? Again, this is in Germany. They were trying to access this environment, the system. Okay. And again, I can see the various exfiltration information here, the ingested information, the raw data from my logs. So what happened? Remember, somebody tried to do we had a delayed, disabled, terminated Active Directory account that was able to access and made an API call. Now we're getting instance accreditation exfiltration. So somebody's trying to use that credential. Now let me, by the way, this one has a score of 2. I'll come back to that in a second. Let me click next. And then here I've got an AWS network firewall alert. So the rule associated with this deals with firewall security. And somebody's knocking on my firewall. This has a severity score of 11. Now, I want to warn you. When you take the test, when the test was written, the range of creating a rule as far as the severity score is 0 to 10. So those of you test takers, it's 0 to 10. Recently, we've added it so that you can actually go up to 11 and make it a severity score of 11. But for test purposes, it's 0 to 10. Again, what's going on here? It looks like somebody's knocking on my firewall, a firewall alert. Again, here's my user who's doing this. Timestamp, source IP, the destination IP. This is identified by CloudFront. Again, they're trying to do a get. And so I can see basically what's happened here. So this is telling me a story. And if I go back here to my signals, again, these are the 3 signals that are telling me my story. Remember, this had a severity score of 6. This has a severity score of 2. 6 plus 2 is 8. 6 plus 2 plus 8 plus 11 is 19. If this value is 12 or greater over a 2-week period of time, that is what automatically generates my insight. So based on the value of these rules, if it's 12 or greater or within a 2-week period of time, that's why I get this insight. And again, it's automatically built into the product. You don't have to worry about it. Okay. Okay. So somebody says, is the event trigger primarily due to a deleted Active Directory account? Sounds like it, yes. And so again, what I would do is I might go back here and say, okay, what does our company policy do about this? We're going to look at that deleted Active Directory account. We're certainly going to check into that account, see what's going on, right? See who's, obviously we're going to talk to Rico Dynamite. They're trying to use this terminated account, see what's going on. Is their actions unintentional, accidental, or are they malicious? And then of course, within your company boundaries, you decide what you want to do about that. You know, put them on warning, whatever. But I now have a story here. Now I also want to check out this instance accreditation exfiltration on my AWS environment. Maybe I want to change that environment. Maybe I want to change the security around that environment. Maybe I want to modify my access control list, okay? And then of course I can see that somebody's trying to access my firewall. Well, people are always going to try to be accessing your firewall. a malicious user agent is trying to. So bottom line is these things tell you a story. And normally you would go in here and say, okay, what actions do I want to take? You know, terminate that Active Directory account, talk to Rico Dynamite, blah, 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 blah. I document all that. And then in here, if I need to, I can also go into my actions and maybe I want to generate a JIRA ticket. Maybe I want to notify a team through PagerDuty. Maybe I want to send Guido out and shoot Rico. I don't know, whatever. Obviously, we won't do that. But you get the idea of things that you and I can do. Now, you notice there's a lot of these incident response with initials. That is from our last admin class. Apparently, these did not get cleaned up. So I'm going to have to clean them up. I'll clean them up on a break. And so we'll get back to that. Now, so any questions about an insight and how to read an insight and understand an insight?
I have a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
In the comment field there, do all the comments appear in that field? So if like 5 people or 5 comments are made, or do all 5 appear?
Yes, yes, they do. Yep. And again, you can, obviously you want to keep a recorded history of this. And by the way, you can also access these comments to print out, resolutions and all that fun stuff. So, Abra, you got some questions here. And are subsequent signals generated the scores based off of the first signal? They are, if they're again from the same entity. So yes, subsequent signals can be based on the first signal. How did I pull up this menu? Actions menu, I assume, is what you're asking. So the only way you can see actions is in your insight. This is the only place you'll see actions. And I click on it. Now, this can be customized. In fact, if you'll bear with me just a second, here under content, here under configuration, here under actions, and you'll learn about this tomorrow. Here I can turn off, and I'll actually probably delete some of these, but Demisto is valid. These incident responses were created in the admin class. So I'm going to turn them off.
I'm kind of breaking up a little bit, so I missed. Where do you go to turn those off?
Okay, you don't have to worry about that. We'll talk about that tomorrow. Okay, where I went, and you don't have rights to get there, is this gear icon. You don't see this gear icon today. Tomorrow you will, and under actions. Okay. Now, if I go back, I've turned a bunch of them off. If I go back to my previous page, and now if I go into actions, a lot of these have gone away. Still got a lot more to clean up. Okay. All right. So the goal here, the thing I wanted to do was I wanted you to be able to go into an insight, and I wanted you to be able to investigate, evaluate, and understand that insight. In fact, what we're going to do here is we are going to, bear with me a moment, go into our PDF. And in our PDF for Lab 3, we've got Lab 3A, Lab 3B, and Lab 3C. Lab 3A was written for a financial logic company, somebody who deals with GDPR, right? And the security and issues associated with GDPR, privacy of what you can and can't do. So Lab 3 was designed to focus on that. Lab 3B, which quite frankly doesn't work right now because somebody killed the insight, all right, is about Sumo Pharma. So there we're worried about HIPAA and stuff like that. So you can't use Lab 3B. Lab 3C is about Sumo Coffee, where we're doing transactions and sales and PCI compliance and all that sort of thing. So the point is, what I'd like to do and what I want you to do is on page 10 here, on page 10 in the financial logic, we're going to look for an insight called persistence with initial access. So I want to go into my Cloud SIEM environment. I want to go into insights. And if you want to filter for an insight, you can go in here to your filter section, click on it, and let's select name. So filters, name, and we have a choice of is not, contains. I'm going to go with contains. And then as I start typing in the name of this, persistence, you'll see that I get a couple of choices. persistence with initial access, persistence with execution and initial access. Well, I believe the one we wanted was persistence with initial access. So if I select this, now it's going to filter my insights for this specific insight. So just bear with me while this does this little search. So these are all about persistence with initial insight, and they're all the same insight. Okay. We're generating some security information here that's creating some problems, some stories and things like that. So what I want you to do is I want you to go ahead and click on this persistence with initial access, this insight, and I'm going to give you 10 minutes to tell me what's going on. So what you're going to do, of course, is examine the signals, right? There's 1, 2, 3, 4 signals. And I want you to tell me what's going on here by looking this thing over. Again, if you need to go into the signals, that's perfectly fine. But I want you to tell me what is happening here. Now, let me give you a little 10-minute timer here. Actually, I tell you what, make it 5 minutes. Should take it long. Make it a 5-minute timer, and then we'll debrief this, then we'll take a break. So you've got those 5 minutes to go ahead and do that. Are there any questions? All right, let's see what you find. Okay, folks, this is John. Again, the ask I asked of you was when we went in here to Insights, we wanted to do lab 3A. And so we wanted to find the insight known as persistence with initial actions. So if I go into my insights here, and if I want to filter where my name contains, and as I start typing in persistence, you'll see it gives me some suggestions. I want persistence with initial access. And then it's now showing me there are 115 of these. They're all the same one, just repeated over and over again. But if you open up these, the ask was to tell me what was going on. And many of you put in the chat box what's going on, okay? So somebody says, as I understand it, somebody got a phishing email and clicked on a link. Yep, correct. So, and there's a malicious file name. So hopefully what you did was you said, okay, here's my first event. And in here, we discovered that there's a file hash. And even if they renamed the file to something different, we're going to key off that file hash, and that can't be changed. So our system automatically detected that there's a malicious file from this device, okay? And again, dealing with, this host name and all that sort of thing. Then we see we got a malicious file, and then we can click the next signal by clicking on this button. And it says user receives an email with a phishing link. Okay. How many people in your company have received an email with a phishing link? And of course, we all know they're not supposed to click on it, but yes, they do. Things happen. So again, we can see the machine that was, identified, the source. We can see again who the entity was. It was this IP address. And then we can go into the third signal. We've got a checkpoint threat emulation malicious file allowed. And so again, we have another one of these files that's trying to promulgate and spread. So this is basically what's going on. Now, the question is, in your company, what would you do to fix this? How would you fix this? What sort of things do we want to put in here to the comments? How do we take care of that? So just throw it out there and see what you get. So you don't have to, no, folks, you don't have to send the findings to me. I just want to make sure you're aware of it. Yeah, Abra mentions, let's isolate the machine. Yeah, first order of business, let's take it off the network. Let's run some software on there, virus software, malicious file check software, all that fun stuff. Talk to the users if it was unintentional, or maybe they brought in that, their disk of viruses. I used to work as a government person, and one of my coworkers kept collecting viruses. It's like, so it's like, as long as you don't use that disk anywhere in the system, we're fine. But you never know. So bottom line is again, you've got to figure out what your actions are, and they're probably within your corporate guidance and things along those lines. All right. So that was the purpose of the exercise, and it sounds like you all pretty well got it. Those of you in security, hopefully you got it. Now I've got a question for you all, and it's a very serious question. My question is, in your company, how easy or hard is it for you to get this information? I mean, if we generate these insights, we quickly see what's happening, investigate it, fix it, and also this is fairly easy. I hope it's this easy in your company's environment, but if it's not, you probably want to think about getting this product. If you think this product has value to you and it looks like it saves a lot of time, I think it's an easy. So yeah, Abra mentions Sumo is my daily bread and butter. Okay, that's good. So I'm glad. And I hope it's working out for you that way. By the way, Abra, I did ask one of my security SEs the questions. I haven't heard back yet. So I am trying to follow up and get that taken care of. Okay. Now, but I'm going to do a couple slides here real quick, and then I promise I'll give you guys a break. Okay. Because I know we've been at it for a while. So just humor me for a second. And let's talk about the day in the life of a SOC analyst. All right.
Can I ask a question just about that last exercise?
Sure.
There was the 4 signals, and the first one and the last one were both CrowdStrike, and they had the same timestamp, but the other 2 were earlier. I'm just wondering why the CrowdStrike they don't show up chronologically.
They should. I'm only going to guess that somehow the CrowdStrike one was delayed or something in transit, but I don't know. They should show up chronologically. So I was surprised when I noticed that too.
Okay.
Olga, is there something you want to add there?
Yeah, I have a question. I didn't get it. How these 4 events combine in one insight? What is the principle? I mean,
Okay. Before I answer that, and I'll gladly answer that, I want to go back to the first person to ask their question and make sure that we're good to go.
sure, thank you.
So I'm going to take them one step at a time. So you may recall I mentioned in a slide earlier that we take all the log data and we bring it into Sumo Logic, right? And then we parse out the information that we need and enrich it by looking at CrowdStrike or whatever. And then we compare these records against the rules that we have, which are issues. And if we have a record that matches the rule, we generate a signal and we extract out the entity of that. Now, the entity is an IP address, a host name, whatever. You're going to find that when we look at our insights, they are all about that entity. So I can see what that entity has been doing. Those 4 signals are all about that entity within a 2-week period of time. So what we're seeing here is we're seeing by that IP address, there were 4 different signals that generated this insight. So an insight is a collection of signals that's correlated by an entity. Does that answer your question, Nova?
Yes, yeah, thank you. Yeah, now it's clear.
Right.
Thank you.
Yep. And it's funny, when I teach a slide, people can't grasp it yet because they haven't seen it. Now, once you get a chance to see it in the tool and you see, let me just go in here and grab an insight here. Now if I grab an insight, now I can see that it's made up of signals. I'm going to grab this one just for something different. And I can see that it's made up of signals, and these signals all share this entity. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4 signals here. Okay. So hopefully, and of course, we can look at the signals and see what's going on. Okay. Okay. Sufril asked, what machine learning model does Sumo Logic use? I'm not sure specifically what machine learning model we use, so I don't know. Okay. It is proprietary. Yeah, that's what I thought, but I know it's proprietary, but I don't know, it's a good question, but it's not one I can put I can provide a quick and easy answer. Okay. And again, Mark asked why the CrowdStrike insights are not chronological. I don't know. I'm going to have to look into that and see why, because they should be. All right. All right. So let me get back to this one slide, and then we'll take a break, and then we'll talk about some more stuff here, but we will wrap up on time, just so you guys are aware of. Just humor me for a moment while I find this lovely slide. Oops, no, that's custom rules. It's not where I want to go. Here we go. All right. So day of a life of a SOC analyst, right? SOC analyst comes in, finds a new insight, waiting for him or her. They are going to then investigate that insight. They're going to look at the raw signals, look at the raw logs, and from that, they will hypothesize to see what's going on, right? What's the first signal trying to tell me? What's the second signal trying to tell me? That sort of thing. So I'm going to hypothesize this. I'm going to take action. So here in my actions, maybe I need to create a JIRA ticket. Maybe I need to send somebody out to scan somebody's computer, whatever. And then typically I'm going to update the status of this, maybe mark it in progress, mark it closed, whatever. And then I'm going to grab the next insight, So, and then continue this process on. And the reason I point this out is there's probably a question or two about this process. So monitoring, investigating, hypotheses, taking action. In fact, I believe there's a question that says, after you hypotheses, what's the next step? You want to take action. And then, of course, you want to update. So that's the process. All right. Any questions so far? Ladies and gentlemen, your work has been phenomenal. Let's take a 10-minute break. When this counter gets down to 0, I'd like you all back here ready to go. Thanks. See you in 9 minutes and 54 seconds. Hey, folks, this is John. A couple of questions were asked during the break. Somebody asked about the timeline here of the class. This class should end in about 30 minutes as far as the lecture and labs. And then after that, we'll do the certification exam, and that will take approximately 60 minutes, or you'll have 60 minutes for it. So officially, the class will end in an hour and a half. So, but if some people have conflicts and stuff like that, hopefully that'll answer your question. Somebody else asked a really good question, and that is, does Sumo Logic, have Sumo Logic? Does every subscription to Sumo come with this insight, come with this tool? And the answer is no. If you want this Cloud SIEM tool, you do have to purchase it. So it's an extra add-on. It's an extra license type thing. But as you can see, it's pretty valuable. So, but hopefully it helps you out, and hopefully it's worth it. So I wanted to answer those two questions. Any other questions before we get started? Okay. Olga, question? Go ahead and ask your question. Man.
Oh, I'm sorry. It was accidentally. Sorry. I don't have any questions. Sorry.
No problem. Anybody else have any questions? Okay. You may recall, if you look at the PDF document that we provided you, we talked about Lab 3A, okay? There is also a Lab 4A. Lab 4A goes with Lab 3A, Lab 4C goes with Lab 3C. But basically what we're trying to show you in those labs, okay? In those labs, what we're trying to show you, Lab 2A and 2A and 2B go together. Sorry, I got my numbers mixed up. But what we're trying to show you is that you can also go into an insight and you could look at the entity, for example. And one of the cool things that you can do is you can click on this context action button. And as I mentioned before, I could do a various lookup, who is lookup and things like that. But I can also take it back into Sumo Logic. So here I can go back and run a Sumo Logic query, which will show me through all of my logs where this IP address may be used. Now, obviously here I'm looking at the last 15 minutes. Let's widen it up a little bit if you don't mind. And we can see where this IP address has been used in my various logs. So I can see here by my sources or by my source categories where this is, and then I can start investigating to see what they've been doing, right? So there's all kinds of integrations here to take this stuff back into the continuous intelligence platform, or the CIP solution, as we call it. So we've got two major products, the CIP solutions, this right here, and then we've got the Cloud SIEM, CSE, Cloud SIEM Enterprise. So as if you don't need enough three-letter acronyms in your life. So again, you can see how we can take advantage of this. All right. So we got a couple questions. Can we take the certification later? Yes, you can. So yes, you can take it anytime. Thanks, Odell, for that. But I realize people got things going on, so I realize some of you are in Europe or maybe in India or whatever, and so it's late your time. You want to put the kids to bed. All right, we get it. We understand. Okay. And believe me, family time is the most important time there is. Now, what I want to do is I want to change gears here a little bit. We've talked a little bit about investigating insights and playing with that and having ourselves a good time. The next thing I want to talk about is how you and I can customize things, right? So we've talked about continuous investigation. What I want to do is talk about how we can customize our Cloud SIEM environment. So just bear with me a second. And like I said, we'll wrap this up here in fairly short order. We've just got 3 more labs to do and we're done. So what are Cloud SIEM rules? Again, Cloud SIEM rules is logical code that will fire off based on your incoming records. When the rule fires, it generates a signal, and we will also extract out the entity, right? And so this record is, again, your information coming from your logs and stuff like that, normalized, structured schema. Maybe it's unstructured. Some of them can be. And then the signal basically says, oh, this record matches one of my rules, therefore it is problematic. It is something I want to make you aware of. It's kind of like if those of you who had little kids, at one point in time, your little kid wants your attention, maybe they'll ask you, maybe they'll kick your shin or something to get your attention. Well, this is trying to generate a signal to get your attention. So there's basically how that works. Okay. Abra also suggested he'd love a session on Sumo SOAR, and yes, we're in the process of building that. So we're adding the training and stuff for that right now, and hopefully stay tuned. That will be out soon. So yep, I understand your request, and we're there with you. As far as custom rules go, okay, there are 4 types of custom rules, and you'll see this in the test question or two. There is a match rule. Match rule is matched based on a simple Boolean expression. And we will create a match rule in this class today. That's one of the next labs we're coming up to. So I want to see if a single successful IP from a specific IP address came in. That's, situations true or false, yes or no. Okay. There's a threshold rule. I want to see a certain count of records match a certain condition. So, for example, a user who's failing to log in, they have 5 failed login attempts in a specific time frame. That's an example of a threshold. Now, besides threshold, we also have a chain rule, and a chain rule is 2 or more different events in a different given time frame window. So a user's failed 5 times to log in, then they successfully log in. This might be indicative of a brute force attack. So we would create a chain rule for that. Now, in tomorrow's class, we will create threshold and chain rules, just so you know. Won't do that today because of time. And then we've got an aggregation rule. Aggregation rules, again, we're going to match a condition in a time window. So I want to see all the different connection attempts from a single IP address in a specific hour. I want to aggregate those. How many times did they try to come in? So those are our 4 different rule types. Now, besides creating custom rules, and this is the interface for that. I'll get into that in just a minute. So don't get too excited about this. We'll talk about this in real time. Okay. So, and by the way, with regards to creating rules, keep in mind that we've got a bunch of MITRE ATT&CK framework rules built here. So we always want to check and see if that rule already exists and is being maintained by Sumo. So if there's some changes to that rule, we'll maintain it. If you create a rule, you've got to maintain it. It helps when you're creating rules to know your environment well and understand, certain things that may occur in your environment. If you're heavily Windows based, then there's probably some window rules that you're worried about. If you're using a certain specific firewall, there's probably some specific things to that firewall you want to make sure that you know. So you want to know your environment well. Understand your risk appetite and priorities, right? If you're a typical software company, you've got a certain amount of risk appetite. If you are a hospital or if you are a credit card company or something like that, your risk appetite for data breaches and stuff is much less, much more at risk. And then, of course, understand these 4 different rule types well. When you do create a rule, we recommend you make small changes and test that rule. In fact, you're going to find when we create a rule, there's something called prototype, mark it as a prototype. And you always want to mark it as a prototype, and I'll explain what that is and why it's important, okay? So set any new rules you create as a prototype to test them. When you mark them as a prototype, they will not generate insights at all. So you want to mark it as a prototype, test it, make sure it all works. Then when you're happy, clear that checkbox as no longer a prototype, and now it will generate insights, okay? I'm sure many of you are very technically savvy, and some of you may have a good deal of Sumo logic experience with this Cloud SIEM product, but even all of our Cloud SIEM engineers always mark every new rule they create as a prototype. So they always do that. Can you give me an example of top 3 risk appetites for software product companies? I'm assuming that your customer list is probably one of those risk things you're concerned about. You don't want to give up your company. Obviously, your proprietary software data and stuff like your proprietary software stuff is something you also want to protect, okay? Typically, the software appetite, risk appetite is typically based on NIST. So so typically that's what most people do when they think about risk and risk appetites and stuff like that. So it is based on NIST. So sorry, fumbled that one up. But now, besides rules, we also have something called rule tuning. Rule tuning allows us to write exceptions to rules without having to modify the rules. So let's say that we've got a rule, and we do have a rule that says, hey, if somebody's playing around with the firewall and changing settings, we want to set off that, generate a signal, right? Well, what if the person who's doing this is your firewall administrator? Then you probably don't want to do that. Well, rather than creating a separate rule for them, what you can do is you can create something called rule tuning, and you apply that to whatever rules you want. So you can create a rule tuning expression and apply it to as many rules as you want to. And these are going to create exceptions. That's what rule tunings do. They create an exception to the rule. And the nice thing about this, because you're writing rule tunings instead of rules, if we update those rules, your rule tuning automatically gets applied to those rules that you've specified. So as we change them, it won't break them. It won't break them. They'll still be applied. So rule tuning is something else. Now, the third thing that you can create in here is a custom insight. Remember what a custom insight is. A custom insight is generated, or an insight is generated when I have records that generate signals and the value of those signals is greater than 12, greater than or equal to 12 over a 2-week period of time. Let's say that I'm playing around and I all of a sudden get some new rule that I created, and I want to see if that new rule is firing. You can automatically take and say, I want that rule, new rule. If it fires, I want to generate an insight. So you can create a custom insight and apply it to rules and say, look, if this rule fires, I want an insight, regardless of score. Give me an insight. Give me an insight now. Okay. So again, insights normally when we have signals, okay, the signals all have a score. So if I look at my blue circles here and I add them up, 1 + 1 + 3 + 2 + 2, that mathematically I think equals about, sorry, I'm having a brain cramp here, 9. That's not greater than or equal to 12. This green box is 4 + 1 + 2 + 3 + 2. That equals 12. That would fire off an insight. And in these red triangles, 6 + 5 is 11 + 7 is 18. That would also generate an insight. So what insights do by default is we look at the scores, the severity scores of our signals, and we add them up. And if it's greater than or equal to 12 in a 2-week period of time, that's what generates an insight. And as I said before, this one will not generate an insight. Now, you can, like I said, if you want to automatically generate and create a custom insight based on a rule or a bunch of rules if you want to. And so it automatically fires off this. You might have a specific environment, specific environmental thing in your system that, maybe it's not covered by these rules. Maybe you've added a new application that, a very homegrown type application, and you want to, again, create a custom insight if something happens to that homegrown application. Okay. Again, you're not changing any rules. You're just creating a new custom insight. Okay. Hang on a second, Abra. Go back to the previous slide here. Bear with me. So Abra's question was, back in this slide, why this created an entity. 2 + 2 + 2 is 6, + 3 + 1 is 10. That's less than 12. That's why it didn't create an insight. So I hope, Abra, that answers your question. No worries. Going kind of fast, trying to make sure we get everything covered here. So, all right. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and talk about these next exercises. So in lab 4, we are going to create a rule tuning expression. Okay. We're going to create a rule tuning expression. And then in lab 5, we're going to create a custom match rule. And in lab 6, we're going to create a custom insight. So let's do lab 4 first. Again, it's on page 18 of the PDF. And I'm going to go into my Cloud SIEM environment. And what I want you to do is I want you to click on content. So here under content, you'll see that you should see rules, rule tuning, and custom insights. I see a bunch of other stuff here to boot. But I want to click on rule tuning. I want you to click on rule tuning. And we can see if we have any existing rule tunings. Now, ironically enough, it's like somebody just created this one, maybe. but these other ones were old. We don't typically have any rule tunings in here, okay? But if you want to, if I want to, we can go in here and create it. And the first thing we do is we give it a name. So I'm going to put my initials in here and I'm going to call it rule tuning. And I recommend you do the same thing. By the way, as soon as I get done with this class, I'm going to clean this stuff up. Now, the question is, do I want to tune and apply this to selected rules, or do I want to apply this to all of my rules? Okay. And I think we want to use a selected rule, but I'll apply to all of our rules. And I'm actually going to do a search here for firewall. So it might help if I learn how to spell firewall. So I'm going to grab this checkpoint firewall. Of course, it's disabled, but let's assume it's enabled. And basically what I want to do is create a rule tuning that if this thing gets, I want to affect this rule somehow. So if somebody's playing around with my checkpoint firewall, I want to fire off, or I don't want to fire this thing off, okay? So you'll notice here I have an option to include or exclude records that match. So here's the deal. I want this rule to fire if it's anybody other than me. I'm the firewall administrator for checkpoint, and therefore, if it's me, I don't want it to fire. Anybody else, I want it to fire. So if I use the word include, I can go in here and type in something like user, and you notice I get a whole bunch of different choices here. User email, user name, user ID. I'm going to go with user email. And I'm going to say something like exclamation mark equals. Exclamation mark equals means not equal. And then when we type in strings, in this product, we type in strings in single quotes, not double quotes. So if I type in one single quote, it gives me the other single quote. So I can put in here my email address. And basically what I'm doing is I'm creating a rule that says, look, if the email is not Jay Meredith, I want you to fire this puppy off. If it is Jay Meredith, I don't want you to fire this off. Now, instead of saying include, if I made this exclude, I could get rid of that exclamation mark. So be careful here about your Boolean logic. But you can, I can, we can create a rule tuning, which creates effectively an exception to the rules. And here's my rule tuning. And I can go up here to rule tuning and I can see a listing of all my rule tunings. By the way, my rule tuning will show up here in a minute. It might just take a minute to show up since I just now created. There we go. Okay. And so I see many of you have created the rule tuning. There's mine. Now, as I said, after this class, I'm going to go ahead and delete these all, just so you know, to clean it up. We got a class going again this afternoon, okay, for this evening. Okay. Tara asked a really good question here. The training data, I'm only seeing entities from a host name or a single IP. You also should see besides a host name, you should see a username too, okay? Can we change this all? Can we define an entity coming from a particular region or a range of IPs? Yes, the answer to your question is you can do that. You can do a CIDR type of domain and stuff like that if you want to. So good question. I want to talk to one of our sales engineers, but I think the answer to your question is yes, you can. So great question, Tara. Thank you very much. Any other questions here? Yep. Yeah, IP address. Okay, good. All right. So the next thing we want to do is we want to go in here to content and we want to create a new rule. Now, again, here in my rules, and here I want you to be very, very careful. You notice it says match rule and web request of IP address. Some of these rules were created by the amount of attack framework. I don't want to delete these, but I'm going to clean up these match rules that were created. In fact, what I could do here is, you know what, I can see when they were created. I can sort it ascending, or I can click on it again to sort it descending. And basically, I'm going to clean up some of these new rules that are here. So just bear with me while it reads my rules here. So that rule I'm going to clean up. This looks like a brand new rule that we've recently added. So those look real. This match rule and stuff. Now, the point is that I want you, when we create a rule, I want you to be very careful about your naming, because that's what I'm going to use to look for these rules and clean them up when we're done in class. So we're going to go ahead and click create a rule. And when we click create, it says, okay, what do you want? Match rule, a threshold rule, a chain rule, an aggregation rule. Which rule do you want? We want to create a match rule. So we can click anywhere on the match rule, and then we're going to give it a name. Again, I'd like you to put your initials, and I'd like you to put the word match rule. It makes it easy for me to find and clean these out. Now, when we create a rule, typically there's two parts to the rule. One, there's the logic that says this is going to trigger it. This is what's going to cause it to fire. Okay. And then we cause it to fire. What do we want to put in that signal? What entity are we talking about with that signal? What's the name? What's the summary? What's the description? What do we want to put in here? Also, notice down here at the bottom, there's reset, there's submit, and there's this golden triangle. And I love this golden triangle, because this golden triangle is not going to let me hit submit until I clear up these things. So it's saying, look, there's some things that are required that are blank, and I'm not going to let you hit submit until you clear these things up. So first, let's talk about our logic. What we want to do here in lab 5 to create our custom match rule is we want to look for a specific device IP. Device IP equals, okay? So we're going to go, oops, I'm sorry, we're going to go in here, and we can start typing in device, and you'll see that I have choices here. I'm going to grab device IP, and I'm going to say it equals, and I'm going to type in a single quote, and I'm going to type in 127.0.0.1, which most of us know is the loopback IP address, okay? Basically pinging yourself. But I'm writing an expression that says, if this condition is true, I want this to fire, okay? By the way, I can also apply a rule tuning expression to this. So I could create a new rule tuning expression. I could add an existing rule tuning expression to this if I wanted to. Again, that's an exception. That's what rule tunings do. Over here on the entity, since we're talking about IP addresses, I probably want to display the device IP. And then here in my name, I can put in whatever I want to, maybe suspicious IP found, and I can specify a summary, whatever I want. Houston, we have a problem. And I can put in the description here, whatever I want to. Suspicious IP found. Send out the SOC team. Or my personal favorite, release the Kraken. Okay, whatever. Now, you get to define a score here, a weight. And as I said, for test purposes, this goes from 0 to 10. But there is a way to change it to 11, but that's another story. So basically, you're assigning a weight. By the way, when you make this rule and you test this rule, one of our best practices is you want to adjust this, bring it up or down by 1, adjust it 1 value at a time. So if you like 5 and you want to change it, make it lower, go to 4, don't go to 3, move it 1 value at a time. So you decide what significance this is, and then you get to add MITRE ATT&CK tactics and technique tags. So for example, maybe this is on discovery. And so I want to add a discovery tag here, and maybe under my techniques, and these are the MITRE ATT&CK framework techniques and stuff like that. Again, I'm talking about, what sort of thing here am I looking at? I'm looking at my IP address, right? Data from my local system or something. So you can use whatever tags you want to. Now, down here, big E, don't forget, save this rule as a prototype. Always, always, always check mark this. The reason is it will prevent it from becoming an insight. So even if this doesn't fire, it'll prevent it from becoming an insight. Now, you might say, hey, I know what I'm doing. I'm a professional, blah, blah, blah. guess what? If this thing fires off as an insight and you send your SOC team into a, into a tizzy because you created a new rule, it's now suddenly firing up all over the place, and you got your folks chasing their heads around, believe me, you'll start check marking this checkbox. Okay. So, and then I get to click submit, and lo and behold, this rule is now going to be added. Now, if I go back, and this area right here is showing me when this rule has been hit, when it's been found. So if I go back here to my rules, and if I go back in here and I pick a rule, just bear with me a second. Come on. There we go. If I pick like this web request to IP address, if I click on it, you'll see that these are all lit up. So these, like I said, it's found a bunch of signals. I can see when they found signals. And of course, if I want to, I can disable this, or I can also edit this. But these are one of the rules that we provided. Okay. All right. At least the Kraken. Yeah, there you go. All right. So that's creating a match rule. Now, the last thing we want to talk about is, again, here in lab 6, we want to create a custom insight. So I'm going to go back in here, and again, content, custom insight. And we can see all the cool custom insights we have in here. And as again, these have got to be cleaned out. But I'm going to go ahead and click create. Again, I'm going to give this thing a name, and just as before, we're going to give our initials and use the word custom insight so that I can find these things. And basically what we're doing is we're saying, look, if these signals occur, we automatically want to generate an insight. We don't care if it receives a value of 12 or greater over 2 weeks. We want to do the insight now. So I get to pick the various signal names or rules that I want. I can do this by signals, I can do this by rules, and I can start, picking up whatever rules I want. Again, I'll start typing in the word firewall, and I'll grab a rule. Now, maybe I want to grab more than one rule, in which case I can say, you know what, they can be in any order or they can be in exact order. So if you got a bunch of rules here, you can specify whether you want it to do, and it will create an insight with the following name, the following description, whatever you want to put there. You can decide whether you want the severity of the score to be low, medium, high, or critical. Okay. I recommend if you're testing something out, don't use critical. You might send your poor SOC analyst in there, tizzy there. And again, you get to use the tactic and technique tags that you want. And so when I click submit, there's my custom insight. And again, if I go back here to my custom insights, I can see all of these lovely custom insights. And I can go in here and edit them and change them and do whatever else it is I want to do. So that's creating a custom insight. Okay. So rules create insights. Not necessarily. Rules are going to allow signals to be generated. Okay. Now, if you generate a rule, a new rule, and you got to wait for it to score enough points to generate an insight, then maybe you want to create a custom insight that says when that rule fires, I want this insight to fire off. Okay. So that's typically why we do it that way. You don't have to. So rules and rule tuning is something that one could manage through Terraform or version control to get review on before deploying. Yes, Jeremy, that's correct. This is all controlled through the API. These can be done through the API. And again, the documentation, the API documentation is right there. Okay, yep. So good question, Jeremy. Any other questions, ladies and gentlemen? Any other questions? Okay. All right, then let's get you guys ready for the exam. Now, to get ready for the exam, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to go back to Sumo Logic. I'd like to go back to the continuous intelligence platform here, right? And quite frankly, if you've got these other tabs opened up, I'd like you to close them up anyway. And most importantly, because in Sumo Logic, you're all logged in as training plus analyst, I'd like you to log out. So again, if you need to, in our Sumo Logic environment, you can open up the navigation panel. That's what this is. Go down here where your training plus analyst account is, click on it and sign out. The reason that is because we don't want you to take it as training plus analyst. We want you to take it with your name so you get credit, not this training plus analyst account. So what we want you to do is we want you to go to your company's Sumo Logic environment. So you're going to go to your company's Sumo Logic environment and you're going to log in with your credentials. And whether or not you have Cloud SIEM is irrelevant. Whether you have this option here, don't really care. Because what you're going to do is you're going to go into this little house tab. You're going to click on this certification page. You're going to click on Get Certified. Now, when you click on Get Certified, if it's the first time you click on it, it might say something like, we need to verify your email. Some panel will pop up with a button. Click on that button, and within a minute or so, you'll get an email from Sumo. In the body of that email is another link or a button. Click on that. This problem will now go away. Now, when you click certification and get certified, it will take you into our learning management system. Okay, great. Thanks, David. So here you are in our learning management system. Up here in the corner, this is your profile. Now, in your profile, if you want to be as narcissistic as me, you can add your own little photo up here, right? You don't have to, but it says your information, and it keeps track of all the exams that you've passed. And if after taking the exam, you want your Uber Eats voucher, you can go and grab your certificate, screen capture it, and email it to training-promotions@sumologic.com. I'll put that in the chat box. Don't worry, we'll get that. But there is the certificate, and you can obviously print it, wall hang it, all that good stuff. You can also add it to your LinkedIn profile, and it will add it to your certifications in LinkedIn. Now, what I want to do, and what I want you to do, is just watch for a second. I'm going to show you where the certification exams are. So here in our LMS under Get Certified, that's where the exams are. And what you want is you want the Cloud SIEM Fundamentals exam. Tomorrow, you can do the Cloud SIEM Administration exam, but you don't want to do that today. You want the Cloud SIEM Fundamentals exam. You're going to click on it, click on the registration button, and boom, you're just like that. You're registered. This has got 3 little items. The first item is, before you start, this is a new exam. It only has 20 questions, not 30 questions like they usually do. So we got 10 less questions for you and still get 16 minutes to complete it. We also made the pass score 70, not 75. So we're trying to make it easy for you because this is a new exam. This is open book, open note, matching text, et cetera, et cetera. When I click next, it says, oh, terms of use. Yes, this information is proprietary to Sumo Logic and copyrighted. You know, you get the idea. And then next takes me to the exam. So here I've got 20 questions, 60 minutes, 1 attempt. And whenever you're ready to start, you click on the little button there. And I want to point something out. So bear with me a second. Okay, there are some steps missing from the diagram, right? So we had collection. We had ingestion, went right there. This creates our messages, and then this is going to create our records right there. And here in our records, we're going to go against our rules, which is then going to generate our insights. So drag the right things into the right field. When I click next, there we go. Now, a couple things. I can see which questions I've answered over here. I can submit my answers. By the way, there's also this little button up there that hides or closes that section. So, and then when you get to the last question, it's going to give you the option to submit all answers. Now, I've answered one question. Let me answer a second question here. How are signals clustered to trigger insights? All right. Basically on a total severity score of these signals, right? Yes. So I'm going to click next. I'm going to go ahead and submit this. I know I only answered 2 questions, so obviously I'm not going to pass. So when I say submit all answers, it says course not passed. Over here, if I expand questions, I can see which questions I got right. I can see which questions I got wrong. Don't know why I got them wrong, but I can see which ones I got wrong. But here, don't forget to hit that submit results button. This is why I'm showing you this. When you click the submit results button, it's going to add it to your profile. If you don't click submit results, it's not going to add it to your profile. You didn't pass the exam. Okay, so please, if you pass, get credit for it. Click this button. That's my only ask. Any questions, ladies and gentlemen? Okay, can you take the exam more than once? Abra, that's an interesting question. If you fail it, yes, you can take it more than once. You can take it whenever you want. You can take it immediately if you want. If you pass it, you've got to wait 30 days to try to get a better score. And I'll be honest with you, Abra, I don't care if you cut a 75 or a 95 or whatever. Doesn't really make any difference. You passed. So don't make this your career, your life's work, please. So just make it easy, take it easy on yourself. But if you do fail it, you can immediately take it again if you want to, no problems. And let's be asked here, which combination of severity rules and severity scores would trigger an insight in the default settings? You couldn't find that in your notes. Again, let's be, if you would give me your 4 choices, I will tell you what those 4 choices are. And here's my message for everybody. If you get stuck on the questions like Gillespie's doing, hey, let me know. Let me and Odell know, and we'll gladly try to help you out. Okay. We want to help you pass. We want to help you be successful. So feel free to do that. So remember, it's got to be a score of 12 or higher. So a rule with a severity score of one trigger 12 different times. I think you would agree 1 times 12 is 12. That would fire. A severity score of 6 or higher that's triggered twice. 6 times 2 is 12. That would fire. A severity score of 1 that's triggered 10 times. 1 times 10 is 10. That's less than 12. That's not going to fire. Rules with severity score of 4 triggered twice. 4 times 2 is 8. That's less than 12. Not going to fire. Rules with severity score of 3 triggered 3 times. 3 times 3 is 9. That's less than 12. It's not going to fire. So hopefully these first 2 are the ones that are going to fire. And I hope that answers your question, Gillespie. Thanks for asking. All right. So ladies and gentlemen, I am going to stop the recording. And by the way, before I do that, let me thank you all for attending today. We hope to see you in tomorrow's class session as we continue on the administration side. But I want to thank you all for taking time out of your day to be with us. And I'm going to be quiet now and stop the recording and let you guys take the exam. So stop the camera, stop the recording.